Homeschool parents, this is a message for you. As a homeschooler, I know you work hard for us. You have many different things to manage.
Our Thinking, Feeling, Willing program is your roadmap to a successful Waldorf homeschool journey. Gain the confidence you need to be the teacher your child wants and transform your homeschool experience. Homeschooling with Waldorf Essentials is one like no other. You not only have curriculum options, you can also add our Thinking, Feeling, Willing program onto your curriculum. What's in the Thinking, Feeling, Willing program? Rhythm, inner work, temperament, the Waldorf curriculum, learning and strengthening your skills in music, circle time, form drawing, handwork, painting, drawing, modeling, festivals, reading, writing, spelling, eurythmy and movement, and our bonus content. Something else you'll get when you join Waldorf Essentials that you will not find anywhere else is the community, and we all need that as homeschoolers.
This is your invitation to fill your cup. We know you're rooting for us. We are rooting for you too.
Welcome everybody to our wonderful chat with Miss Daniela. We're going to talk about Class 6 today, who's ready for Class 6, what the expectation should be at this age, what the content is. We'll get some of Miss Daniela's pearls of wisdom with regards to teaching this age. And then in our Patreon section, we're going to go a lot deeper. We're going to talk about Christ and Muhammad a little bit more, definitely about the Roman content, and talk about physics some more, because that's one that trips us homeschooling moms up sometimes. So welcome again, Daniela. I'm so appreciate you being here again. I loved what we did with Class 4, so this is great. I'm excited to dive into Class 6 now. You introduce yourself, so tell us about you, Daniela.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you for inviting me and for the opportunity to speak here and to share this with everyone. You heard my name is Daniela, and I like to say that my path to teaching in Waldorf education model has been like long and beautiful and convoluted across many mountains over many seas. And that really is the beauty of it. And I love hearing stories from everybody else of how they come to Waldorf education.
Right.
You know, as I look back here, I am now in seasons of 7 teaching and working with amazing faculty and families and students who inspire me every day. To get here, I homeschooled my own son for a large part of his school journey. I taught at our local Waldorf school here for a number of years, since 2011, all up until, the years are running together now.
Right.
Up until it was my son's time to go to high school. Then we moved for him to do some high school years in a Waldorf school. Then pandemic came, then we came back, then he homeschooled for 11th and 12th grade. So it's been this weaving, this beautiful tapestry of working as a homeschooling parent and teacher, as a class teacher at the local Waldorf school, as a parent and teacher, you know, at the same time,
Right.
having my son attend the Waldorf school I was teaching at, and then still homeschooling and weaving that together and alternating through the years. It's been amazing. The biggest blessing is that everything that led up to me discovering Waldorf education came together. And this is what I really love to share when I introduce myself, is that not that much about, you know, I did go to school, of course,
Right.
and, you know, I have my background, my doctorate degree is in traditional naturopathy, and I used to practice and teach holistic lifestyle living. And I still do offer those sessions for some of my old students and old clients, but just all of that together, the life itself kind of bloomed and ignited a new flame when I stepped into a Waldorf classroom, when our local Waldorf school needed a helping hand. And I stepped in and I knew I was supposed to be there. And out of those life experiences to then inspire students to see that everything is related in life. We are human when we live life to that fullest degree.
Praise so
And
much.
that I think is more important than my degrees, which you can read on Seasons of 7 website.
Right,
All of these
absolutely.
things.
No, but you know, I agree so much. I think what's so beautiful is that there isn't one part of the Waldorf curriculum that is just like, oh, well, we don't know why we do this. It doesn't have anything to do with anything else. Every single piece is intertwined. It is woven together. It, goes horizontally and vertically, all of those pieces. And when you can look at it as this beautiful whole, then you can really start to understand the parts and the pieces that go in there. And, Steiner talked about the whole apart stuff all the time. And so I love to, when a parent says, well, why this? And I go, all right, well, let's take a step back and let's look at the bigger picture. What we're doing here has, like, it's not just about where they are right now, but as they grow, they're gonna look at it again in a more in-depth way. And it paves the way for them and paves the space for them to, really be flexible thinkers and to really ignite their minds in ways that I've never seen anywhere else. And, I've been around the block, I've studied a lot of different methods. And I, especially in my early years, like with my own children, I couldn't find anything. People would say, oh, try Thomas Jefferson, try Charlotte Mason. And I would go, okay, but wait, there's so much depth in Steiner. All that stuff is great for some people. But if you want the whole thing, it's here. Like, all of it is here. And so I actually kind of like it when, and maybe you do too, maybe I'm just weird, but I like it when people are like, there's no way they can get a child ready for college. And I go, oh, would you like to have a conversation? Let's sit down and chat for a little bit. Because I think that that's really, and not just college, but life. It's such a beautiful space, such a beautiful space. So let's talk about, like, who is the child in class 6? What are they looking like? Who is it right? Which children are ready for this?
If you're listening to this podcast, you probably have just wrapped up grade 5. So you are coming out of the golden balance year.
Yes.
Which is in between that 9-year change, that separation, stuff we talked about in 3rd and 4th grade. And then ahead of you is teenage and puberty and metamorphosis. The child. One thing I want to say is I would love for all to see the beauty in this time.
I agree.
To resist as much as we can the influence from the outside that tells us this is hard time. This is such an important time. I think this is the most important time we have in the school journey up to 8th grade. We see the child now visibly taller. Growth spurts will happen at different times. Not everybody will turn 12 and suddenly have a growth spurt, but between 12 and 14, children will have growth spurts. They will grow long limbs. So all of a sudden, these things that were easy for them in grade 5, these jumps and rolls and twists and dances become really hard because
they feel a little gangly, like they have too much going on.
Yes. Mm-hmm. They sometimes can feel clumsy, and all of these things unfold at the same time as their inner world changes and they start to feel self-conscious. They start to, the judgment they directed at us in 4th grade and criticized us how we dress, they start to direct inwardly. They start to look at how they dress, and sometimes they'll, depending on their personality, temperament, experiences, that's going to look different. But they're going through an amazing metamorphosis. It's like coming out of a cocoon, and it's amazing. So
it's such a beautiful way to put it, because I think that's the space of really being able to support them as they're becoming something else. And that self-consciousness. I remember my daughter last year, she's been martial arts since she was 4 years old. 4 or 5, she comes to the first class and she's had her cycle and she knows she's, not a little kid anymore. She doesn't want to spar with the boys anymore. The boys don't care, but she's feeling self-conscious all of a sudden. It took her almost all year to feel like that she could be herself with these kids. So I think it's really interesting. And, you said something when we talked about class 4, you said, we really got to read the child. And I think it's like almost more important than ever right now, that we're
Yeah.
reading and we're really listening, maybe even listening to the things they're not saying as much as we're listening to the things they're saying.
Exactly. And when we are listening to the things they're saying, to find our own 12-year-old inside of us and to listen from that space instead of receiving it in a way that we would judge it
Right.
as hard, wrong, difficult. All of these things are such terrifying labels, which I really hope we can get as far away as we can as we teach children and raise them and help them find their way into the world. When I was also in martial arts from early childhood up through almost like really, really many years. And I remember being in sixth grade and thereabout, and all of a sudden, all of these things I could do and I could compete in, I couldn't do. And it's not even that I cared whether I'm sparring with boys or girls. I just didn't like the way that I moved. And
Right. That you're feeling in your body.
just was wrong. It just was not fitting right because my legs were too long and everything we needed to do, it just was feeling wrong. So I think every child is going to have some type of this experience and will express it differently. So yes, again, we need to remember, read the child, feel who it is you are honored to raise into the world and to help them find their way.
I agree. And, just to tag onto that, this is not the time to give them a phone. This is not the time to leave them unattended on the internet. This is not the time to think that it is okay for them to be unattended in these places, because these places are meant to make us doubt our bodies. These places are meant to make us doubt how we're incarnating. And that is not what we want our children to see. We want to really give them the space of beauty so much.
Yes. And you said not the time to leave them unattended. So another part of this developmental stage is the need for rules. And later when we get into curriculum and why do we study exactly now the history that we study now, the rules, the law, the strictness is so important. It's almost like another time through. Remember in grade 3, we talked about how much they needed to feel safe. They needed to feel the limit. Well, now they need to feel the rule, and they need to feel that this is the law of this path this year.
And they feel better when they know what the rules are. They feel better with those rules. When I was teaching 6th grade to my second son, he was going back and forth between my house and my ex-husband's house. And he said, "Mom, I feel safe here. Because I know what the rules are." They need to know what the rules are. And if you don't have any rules, you need to invent some rules, something so that they feel that safety in that space, not because you're a mother hen, not because you're helicoptering, but because they need some rules. You need to have and they need to know what the rules of the house are.
Yes. And what the consequences are. I think that's another thing. What is going to be, because this is, and later we'll talk about physics and cause and effect and all of these things. This is the time when everything in their bodies is starting to change. They don't know what to make of it. There are no rules from their perspective. We know that there are rules to that. But when you're first going through all these changes, it feels like there are no rules. And it feels like everybody around me is looking different and going through it differently, and it's just me going through it this one way. So while that is all unfolding, the outer world needs rules. There needs to be cause and effect and clarity in order for all of this to have space of safety to unfold, not for us to change it.
They're really sort of like crossing this other Rubicon, this other space. And I think 12 can feel really tumultuous for some children. Some children just pass right on through. But many really struggle and struggle almost more at the 12-year change than the 9-year change. Again, depending on temperament, you're going to have kids that are in different places. So again, being able to really, like you're saying, read them, watch them, listen to them. It's not the time for you to stop reading them stories. It's not the time for you to, sort of give them too many responsibilities. Of course, give them some, but it really still is, you really still have to pay attention. You really still have to be there. You have to listen and allow that loving piece to grow between you, especially if it's a child you struggle with. Especially if it's one you struggle with. Out of 5, I struggled with you. So, so what would your expectations be for this age, do you think? Like, how are they different from class 5?
I think they're different because their intellect is in a different place. So in some places, if you read indications and lectures, you're going to see discussions of false dawn of intellectual consciousness, and it's reflected in the history that they're going to study. Their intellect is hungry for something, but they don't have the capacity yet to really wrestle with stuff they're going to wrestle with in high school. But they're ready to elevate, to think, to observe, to see phenomena. They're ready to study cause and effect. And that's why sciences are coming. That's why history is coming in the way that it's coming. And they need to be accountable. These laws, these rules, these expectations, we need to start introducing a way of measuring accountability. And it doesn't have to necessarily be traditional schooling grades. No, but
there are many ways.
Your work is accountability. If our agreement is that I expect you to complete your main lesson book drawing by this day, let's say Friday of this week, then that's what I expect. And I know you can do it, and you have to rise to the occasion. There's also time that you're going to feel, so they're going to feel it's hard, but that is the experience, that it's hard. And instead of saying that it's not hard, just do it, we say you can do it.
Right. We give them that confidence. We help
pulling them up, because they will want to give up, and we need to be pulling them up without lecturing, because in this process they're finding their strengths, they're finding their paths, they're finding their courage, and that is really important. So as much as we want grades because they're easy to read, it's really not about grades. It's about persevering, about completing, and beautifully completing, really giving it your touch, really thinking about what you saw in that physics experiment. What did you see? Don't assume, but like, come back. What did you see with your eyes and things like that?
I agree. And I do think with the space of expectation, don't this is me. I'm kind of a hard ass sometimes, but if you give me something that is not beautiful, we're going to do it again. So this is definitely a time where, yes, it might be hard, but it's harder if you have to do it twice. So let's slow down. You know what my expectations are as your parent, as your teacher. So we're going to slow down, and you're going to execute it properly. And I think so many parents are afraid to say, oh no, I don't want them to have to do it again. It's funny. My husband used to be a newspaper reporter. And we went through this with child number 2 or 3. He was like, do you know how many times my editor sends something back to me before she accepts it and puts it in the paper? Like last week, it was 9 times. So let's not complain about your mother making you write a second draft. I think it's the space of like, oh, wait, because they are more open to the world. And sometimes we have to write something more than one time.
I think it's easy to think, so it's easy to get complacent with, in first grade, we didn't ask them to do everything again. And
right. We made little flowers when they made a mistake.
And it's curved, and that's all it needed to be.
Right.
But in 6th grade, we are going to use a compass, and we're going to make a circle, and we're going to make another one of exactly the same size. We're going to be precise. If we're going to really honor this time and what they need, we're going to aim for precision, for thoroughness, for completeness, for really being accountable, and for really rising up to an expectation that they may think is hard. And it's not unhealthy to feel that it's hard. So when a child of this age, and my son in the past would tell me this is hard, I say that's so good. That is great. That means your life would be boring.
I love things that are hard. Challenge accepted. No, I think it's great. I think it's great. And like I said, I think if we can get over ourselves, it's because the parent we have to look at our temperaments too. And, I find the choleric child will only will only like listen to another choleric or somebody they trust. So if you're not choleric and you're parenting a choleric child, you better find that choleric in you and be able to say, this is how it is. And if you're a choleric mother and you have a melancholic child, you have to figure out how to not stomp on their feelings constantly. And all of those different things that we interplay with regards to our temperament and our children. But we have to really study that space of, this is what I expect. And don't be afraid to expect it. And don't be afraid to say, you're right, it's hard. What can I do to help? And no, not doing it is not an option. Because that's well, you can make me not do it. No, sorry, that's not an option. So what is the general content for class 6? We'll talk like deep content in the second part, but what's the general content for class 6?
So overall, we have math, we introduce algebra, we go with business math, percentages, interest rates. We bring in astronomy, and we bring in geometry, which is now precise, which we use geometric tools, and we really aim at that precision. We bring in physics, we bring in optics and acoustics, and everything from phenomenological approach, observing and seeing phenomena instead of giving a definition. So that definition comes at the end, of course. We also have mineralogy and geography, which can be tied mineralogy and geography together with biomes of the world, or we can tie all of that together with history. And very often it all just comes beautifully together. There are history blocks, then astronomy, then mineralogy, then we come to next history block, and all of it all of a sudden starts to meet each other. Kind of like at the end of 5th grade, everything met at the end of ancient Greek block. So in this way, towards the end of 6th grade, all of these things will meet each other and will form this wholeness as they relate to each other. And in history, we have ended grade 5 with Alexander the Great and his conquests. And now in 6th grade, we pick that up and we follow it up through Roman Empire. We see further into the Crusades, into the Ottoman Empire, and we come to the Middle Ages by the end of grade 6. So all of that,
a lot of history content,
important, and all of it relates to geography so much, to resources, to mineralogy, to all of these beautiful things on Earth.
I agree. I love the sort of the breadth of 6th grade with regards to the history content, because if you're looking at this like where they went, where did these crusaders go? Like where, even if you're looking at Jerusalem and the life of Christ and where he lived, or where Muhammad lived, all of those places, if you look at it on the map, they look so far apart. But these people traveled a lot. They moved a lot. So to be able to have that conversation about the geography and how beautifully all of it comes together, and all the ancient texts that we have written about places that you can find today. You can read an ancient text and go, oh, well, I know where that is, or I can go and see that. So I think that becomes this beautiful place where they're connecting with history. They have this new capacity more than they did last year, and they can connect with history in a way that they weren't connecting with it before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I really find that a fun piece. And I do love the exactness and the preciseness of geometry at this place too. They get to create some really beautiful things and really see that it's not just the math. And that's one fun piece when people come to Waldorf late and they don't even realize that the geometry that we're doing is not the geometry you did as a child. It's so different. It's so different. Yeah. What would you say is, well, maybe I'm just going to ask you this question. What's your favorite block to teach in class 6?
Oh, that's the most difficult question.
It's also, I love all of it, but.
Oh, I think geometry, because it's so freeing. There is a lot of tension in every block, which the children need to feel, but also a parent and a teacher feels as well. And I love them all. I love the depth of all the history of all the stories. But my favorite time is when a child starts to breathe out and we go and gaze at the stars. And I love to do astronomy and geometry together. The beauty of precise geometry.
Never done that. That's interesting.
Gazing at the stars at night. There's this healing and preparedness to go back into the stream of history from there. And of course, the stream didn't stop. We tell the story of the astronomers long before, and people who tried to make sense of the world, and it was geocentric. It's not what we understand today,
Right.
but this is where they were, and we try to experience that through the story and through our own observation. And I just love the healing mood of that time.
I do love that. You're making me think of something. Often I do some astronomy in sixth, but I do most of it in seventh with the explorers. But gosh, I'm working on the sixth grade revision right now. So I'm thinking, it'd be really fun to study astronomy with the three wise men and who these people were and why were they looking at the stars.
That's an interesting idea.
It's a different, because I feel like bringing this foundation of it allows us to go a little bit deeper with because there's such a difference between what they knew in the, those very early years around the time of the life of Christ versus, some more study when you get to these explorers that are then circumnavigating, using the stars to do that and all of. It's very different. It's very different. It is.
Astronomy in sixth grade is very different from navigation and astronomy in seventh grade.
Right. Absolutely. It's such a beautiful space though. I do always recommend, don't try to do it until the time changes though, or else you're going to be up until 11 o'clock at night trying to see stars. But if you wait until the time changes, then you might be able to see them at 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So unless you're in the Southern Hemisphere, I don't know, all bets might be off for that. Things are probably a little bit different, but I was trying to think if there's anything else we wanted to talk about with regards to class 6 and this general content. I do love the business math content and keeping it fun. Is a fun place, and sort of I like to do the history of money a little bit so that if we're talking about money across the world, we might as well talk about where money came from, the first money, the way Romans looked at money, all of those pieces all can come together with this year and the main lesson content. I do love the history content, but I'm a little I like history a lot. Okay, well, Daniela, thank you so much for joining us for this first part. We're going to dive deeper in our Patreon part next. So thank you everybody for joining us. If you want to hear the rest, come on over to Patreon and hear the rest of it. And we will see you all later. Find our Patreon at Ariel's Light. So Ariel's Light, if you haven't heard already, is the ministry that we started this year. Interfaith, so we welcome people of all faiths to come and experience and converse and really get to know this conscious parenting space. I see it as a space for people that might be deeply into their religion, like being able to go deeper in what that parent-child relationship means. And then people that are just trying to figure out, what does this inner work journey mean to me? We're in that space, and I've been there trying to figure out, how do I bring what's welling up inside me to my children so that they aren't lost in confusion, so that they actually have this piece of goodness and beauty that Steiner always talks about. So the ministry has roots of anthroposophy, and we will be talking about things from an anthroposophical standpoint, but also really bringing you good content that you can bring into your life